Welcome to A Second Helping with Allison Bartow, a wedding photography podcast with a focus on second shooting. On this week's episode, we have relentless rum offers from the best man, an offended pregnant bridesmaid, boob tape issues, and the highly unfortunate usage of the term lady garden. Hey guys, it's Wednesday. I have a wedding this Friday, and it's been on my calendar for a while. It's with Pat, and all it says on my calendar is farm in Pottstown. I checked in with Pat on Monday to see if we had any details, and he scheduled a call with the bride for the next night, and then he sent me the timeline. So I opened it up, and the first thing I saw was at 2:00, the wedding coordinators, the caterer, the photographer, the flowers, and the desserts arrive. Also at 2:00 is the first look for the bride and groom. So we all know that's not happening like that. The next thing I noticed is that it has the bride and groom's first name, no last names, no wedding date, no addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, no other names. So no parent names. The only vendor that is named is the name of the wedding coordinator company, but not the contacts that are going to be there. It says point of contact. It does list a dad and an uncle, but no contact information for them. I just saw something else. Oh, guys getting ready 5 miles away. That's it. I don't know 5 miles in which direction. Just 5 miles away. So my first instinct was to text Pat back right away. But I was like, no, he doesn't get fazed by this stuff. I'm the one who goes through and has all these questions. So I reviewed it all, and then I sent him an email. And I just said, hey, tomorrow when we're on the call with the bride, I want to figure out, what the actual time is for these things, where the groom's getting ready. And then there were 2 other questions that I just wanted to make sure we covered. So we had the call with the bride and groom. Pat had sent me over the engagement photos he did for them. They looked like very nice people. They were wonderful on the call. So they're excited for the wedding, a little bit nervous because it's calling for rain right at that kind of a big chunk of time in the afternoon there, and their ceremony's at 4:30. So we went over everything. They're pretty laid back about stuff. They're just a little bit nervous about the weather. And I got the address for where the guys are. So it looks like it's about a 10-minute drive. And I kind of gave them a little bit more instructions. Like I told the bride, hey, you're going to want to come up with the time that you want to be dressed by, probably 1:30 if we're doing the first look at 2. You're going to want to give all your ladies a deadline of, say, 1:15 for them to be dressed because they need to all be dressed before you get dressed. And then I told the groom, same thing. You're going to want to have all of your guys dressed by 1:15. We're going to need to leave the house. Let's call it 1:30, even though we're okay if it's closer to 1:40. And he said, oh, good. That's good. Yeah, you can help because I'm a procrastinator, which I get procrastinating, but that's just running late on your wedding day if you're just not getting dressed. So what do we have there? We've got 4 groomsmen. So I'll have 5 guys to nudge along. I don't know where the dads will be. They might be there. Hair and makeup, we found out, is getting there at 8:30. So that wasn't on our timeline. But that should be good. They've got 5 bridesmaids and a bride. And I also suggested that she reach out to the hair and makeup team and just let them know what time she needed to be ready by so that they could build that in. We also found out that the florist is coming between 1 and 1:30. They are not doing boutonnieres, which we all know that makes me happy. There's only 120 guests. I guess that's a fair amount. I think I'm probably jaded or confused about guest counts after 382 people at the event last Saturday. So 120, I think, is a good number for a backyard farm wedding. They also requested a pic of the grandfather with the grandkids. And then I think they want to try to do a picture of everybody, all the wedding guests. So that's on here. And then afterwards, Pat sent over the floor plan / map for the event. So I can see the tent, the dance floor where the sweetheart tables are going to be, the DJ. Apparently there's a photo booth and props, which wasn't on, they're not on the timeline either. And then thankfully it does say where the ceremony site is. There's another square and it says rain plan, tent over ceremony, tent walkway. So that's good that there is what looks to be a solid rain plan, because I was worried they were going to try to potentially like move everything around in the reception space. It's just hard to try to do the ceremony under the tent and then cocktail hour under the tent while you're putting all the tables back and then go into reception. So it seems like there's a solid rain plan. And then Pat made some comment about we're professionals and we're fine in the rain. Our gear is fine in the rain. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not fine with my Z8 out in the rain, and I have a wedding the next day. So I'm not looking forward to putting my camera out in the pouring rain. So it looks like we'll be fine with the tents. This was a first time. So Pat let me know that the bride had found him on The Knot, and when they were having one of their first phone calls, she mentioned that she's a speech therapist, and I think she asked Pat where his son went to school, and he said the name of the school. And then she said, "Oh, I'm a teacher at that school." And she said, "What's your son's name?" And he told her, and she goes, "Oh, I'm a speech therapist." So they figured out that she is his son's speech therapist. So last night on the call, God love him, Pat throws out there, "Oh, by the way, my son would love to come to the ceremony, just the ceremony. He'll leave right after. You know, he really wanted to. He was looking forward to it." And she just kind of stammered, and I think she said, okay. And then he's like, "I'm not sure if he will. Like, it'll just depend." But I was taken aback. I don't know if there are any kids invited to the wedding. So if there are relatives there and they were told they couldn't bring their kids, and then they see the photographer's son out in the audience. So we'll see. But, oh, Pat, I think it's nice that your son would like to be at his speech therapist's wedding. So that's it. I am just going to show up there at the bride and groom's house on Friday at noon, keep those guys moving along, and hopefully we've got some good weather for the bride and groom. And Pat and I got on a call afterwards, and we were on like Google Maps trying to see exactly where we thought the tent might be set up. And then he did email the wedding coordinators. I didn't see a response, so I might check in with him just to see if he got an answer. It doesn't really affect us either way. I was just kind of curious. So that's it. I'll be back. Whew. It's 8:20 and I'm on my way home. So happy about that. Normally I wouldn't be as jazzed about it, but because I have a wedding tomorrow, I'm excited to like get home, charge all the batteries, go to bed at a reasonable time. So I'm really happy about that. Let's see. It went well. Got dicey with the rain for a scooch. Yeah, I got a little nervous. First of all, I got there really early, so I drove like past the address and did some stuff, composed myself. No, I just caught up on a couple things, and then when it was like 11:40, so like 20 minutes ahead of time, I like pulled down the driveway. This is why I never like get to the address and park earlier than I feel like going in, because invariably they will see you and say something or come out. So I pulled up, and the groom came out and was like, "Hey," and I said, "Oh, hi," introduced myself. And I said, "How you doing? How are we feeling?" And he was like, "Well, I've got a buzz on, so pretty good." So that was like a huge red flag for me, because it's noon and you already have a buzz on. Well, not even. It's 11:40 and you already have a buzz on. So I just said, I'm going to check some emails and, gather up some stuff, and I'll be right in. He said, cool. So that's what I did. I checked some emails, returned a couple text messages, and then made my way in. Their house was built like it's on a farm, and it's like the caretaker's house sort of. So there was barely any natural light. It was all overhead lights. It was the groom and then his 4 groomsmen, 2 of which were his brothers. I think it was just 2 were his brothers, 1 was his friend. And so we had an hour and a half there, a little bit more than that. And
They were really great. They were drinking Miller Lite, so it wasn't like he'd been doing shots of tequila. So I think he was just a little bit nervous, and he said that. But they were really gracious. They offered me food. The best man, God bless him. I've never had anyone all day relentlessly offer me alcohol, specifically rum. So he was like, "You want a beer?" And I was like, "No, I'm good." And he was like, "We've got beer, rum, champagne, rum. Do you want any rum?" And I was like, "No, I'm good." And he kept saying it. And then finally I did the old, like, "Oh, if I were to start drinking, all your pictures would be blurry." And one of them goes, "I feel like autofocus does a really good job these days." And I was like, "Well, yeah, it does." And then we just changed topics. So the one brother, he has his PhD in, shoot, what kind of engineering? Some kind of very impressive engineering. They're all engineering is impressive. It'll come back to me. But he had dropped his white shirt in the driveway when he got there. So he had tried to clean it off, and then it left like a bigger water mark around it. So then he was working on cleaning that off. He had shout wipes. He was dabbing it. He's doing all this stuff. They finally like get it okay. They hang it up. Somehow he gets a stain on the collar. So it was like, and I tried to make him feel better. And I was like, it's really, because it wasn't noticeable. I was like, it's not noticeable. I mean, if anything, it's really sweet how much you actually care. So he was like kind of beside himself with the whole situation. They were good. They were, really just hanging out. The best man who liked rum was also, what is it? Devil's angel, best friend, whatever that alcohol is. He was doing shots of that. But the groom was pretty composed. So I got to know them a little bit. We really chatted. I found out, about the one brother, his daughter. She was a flower girl. We talked a little bit about her. And I really like to take that time to sort of tell them, like, hey guys, so later on, here's what I'm going to be kind of barking orders at you. And I tell them ahead of time, like phones, wallets, like we're going to keep telling you to take that stuff out of your pockets. So I find it just makes a difference, because I've noticed that they start like taking them out like before they're even lined up, and they're not like confused by it. And I said that, and the best man said, "Oh, thank goodness." He said, "because when I got married, my photographer didn't mention it." And he goes, "And you can see my stupid cell phone in my pants in every picture." So he really appreciated it, and he commented on it like 2 more times. Yeah, and I told them, I was like, just start getting ready. I was like, you don't have boutonnieres or anything, but you've got the ties and all that. And my goodness, I said, you might want to just start cutting those tags off the suspenders. I mean, all those little things just take so long. I had checked in. I asked the groom, "How have you heard from her? How's she doing?" And he said they were there at like 6 a.m. He said she was freaking out about the weather. And I was like, oh, geez. When I texted Pat to check in, I didn't say anything because I didn't want him to say like, "Oh, I heard you were freaking out. How are you doing?" I just waited until we were on our way and just said, "Hey, we're on our way over." So we got there a little bit early. I went in and I met the ladies, and it was a little packed with all the women. They were running behind. And I want to say we did the first look like 30 minutes late. And she had also decided to move up like immediate family formals to right after the first look so that we could get them done before the ceremony, which makes sense. But it stinks when you're running late then and everyone's just standing around. First look, we go down to the gazebo, and there are people like up on the driveway. So they're like up on the hill a little bit further away. All of a sudden, there's a woman like 5 feet away from me. And I realized that it's one of the moms. I don't know which one, but she's standing there. So it's just the groom in the gazebo, me with my angle so I can get the bride's face, Pat. And so I kind of gesture because there's just this woman there for their first look. And it was supposed to be like an intimate first look. And she had her phone out. So Pat had to tell her like, "Hey, Mom, can you just like step aside?" So I think she was a little bit annoyed, but it just wasn't the time for that. They had the tent up for the ceremony, and it looked so dark. It did have windows on the sides, but it just still looked like low dark tent. And I was like, oh no. We're doing photos, and then the wedding coordinator at 3:30 said, "Hey, I'm gonna set up your ceremony outside." And I was like, that's a bold move, because it was like dark skies. So we knocked out a bunch of the family pictures. There were a few grandparents that weren't there. Then we did some bride and groom portraits. Then they went relaxed, set up lights. It started drizzling 15 minutes before the ceremony. I was nervous. Pat he brought a box of freezer bags to put over like our flashes, which I didn't use flash. It wasn't dark enough for me to need flash outside. I did go get like a rain jacket so that I could put it on just to like protect my cameras. Thank God, right before the ceremony, it stopped raining. So they had a really nice ceremony. They did their own vows. It was great. The officiant was good. She's like a family friend. She actually is the woman who owns the property that they live on because the bride has babysat her 5 children for a long time. The bride was a little nervous. There was a whole situation going on with boob tape, and then, you know, people keep fussing with boob tape. One bridesmaid got a snag and like a huge run in the back of her dress. Another one had like a Band-Aid that was supposed to be holding a bra strap. So it was just a curled up Band-Aid on her back. So I removed that. Yeah, we had the ceremony, and then we moved right into the family formals. There were a lot of people, but we were able to quickly move through them, and the weather held out. The tent was huge, so there was plenty of room in there, and everybody was pretty good. There wasn't really drama that I saw. The wedding coordinator worked really hard. The flowers felt like they were a little late getting set up, but they were essentially done in time, and there were a ton of candlesticks to light. I loved that the bride saw the like 13, 17 candlesticks on the sweetheart table and asked if they could remove some. And then I said, thank you, because it's actually much easier for us when we're taking pictures. So I appreciated that. And they were just kind. They were like, make sure you eat, all that kind of stuff, which is just always nice when people go out of their way. The DJ, I mean, he did introductions, rolled right into the first dance. And it was, their first dance was like right, a lot of times it's like introductions and they do like a little dance and then they sit and then it's like their official first dance. This was just like rolled right into the first dance and then right into the parent, like we didn't even have a picture of them walking off the dance floor, and he was announcing like the next parent dance, and they were just coming up really quickly. And then it was into speeches and just flew through it. So, I mean, I guess it's good, but it felt a little bit rushed. The speech wasn't by a bridesmaid. It was one of the girls that the bride used to babysit for. It was pretty funny. It went a little long. There were some duds in there, but she, did her best and did a good job. And then the best man, he did a good job. He teared up. He got a little sad, so it was very nice. It was heartfelt. I don't know if it was like 7 o'clock or so when Pat said, you can wrap up at 8. And I was just like, that's fantastic, so that I can, have a good night's sleep and all of that. Pat was his typical Pat. He commented on the boobs while the ladies were getting ready. We were doing portraits, and at one point I ran up to grab something from my car. I stopped at the bathroom trailer, and then as I was coming out, Pat, the assistant, and the bride were walking, and he looks at me and he goes, "Were you pooping?" And I was like, "No." And then I said, "Pat, is there any filter between your brain and your mouth?" Like, I just said it because it was like, what? Seriously? So when they were all lined up for their wedding party portraits, months ago, we had a wedding together, and one of the more scandalous bridesmaids, I don't know the right way to say it, she kept telling the girls to lower their bouquets and put them in front of their lady gardens. And I was like, ugh. So while they were all lined up today, Pat said, put your flowers in front of your lady gardens. And I blurted out, Pat, we don't say that. And then, because I heard one of the bridesmaids say, like, did he say lady gardens? And it was just like, they were not the other wedding. They don't know that it's a joke, or it's supposed to be a joke. It's not a joke. It's just stupid. And I'm like, oh my God. And then he was trying to pose the ladies. And I don't think he even heard this. He had 3 on one side and the bride, and then I don't know if he was doing them by height or what. He was trying to get them organized. And he made some comment about, at least you're not next to the pregnant woman. And he didn't mean it in a negative sense, but the way that it came out, no one really understood. And the one bridesmaid was like, did you just hear that? And she was like, at least you don't have to stand next to the pregnant lady. And the pregnant lady's face was like taken aback. I heard them mention it like a couple more times. I didn't even say anything to, like, sometimes depending on what it is, I'll say something to try to make someone like feel a little bit better or like explain it. And I was like, I am not touching this with a 10-foot pole. I don't know what he was trying to say. It just did not come out the right way. And I was like, oh my God. And then there were a few other things about boobs. And I was like, Pat, my God. I think that was it. The guys were pretty, like, they were great. They were easy to work with. Food was good. They had bottled, like, glass bottled soda. So, I mean, that's always a highlight. Although only 2 bottle openers. And they were loose. So it was like they could be anywhere. And they weren't even like bottle openers. They were wine keys with the bottle opener on the handle. So, I mean, from a planning standpoint, you got to have more of those. They need to be like tied or something to each container so that people can easily get to them. Because that's a shit show. There was, there were wine barrels. And then on top of them, they had like faux wood circles to make like high tops. They weren't secured at all. So if you leaned on them, they could tip or slide around. So I thought that was an accident waiting to happen. So we're taking family formals. And this is always just an issue. And I should try to figure out like a really polite way, succinct phrase to use. But I've mentioned it before. When you're taking family formals, another family member will always step up a couple feet away from the lead photographer and take their iPhone pictures. And the problem is people are looking in both directions. So they aren't all focused on the camera. So the grandmother is holding up her phone. Pat realizes because he sees people start looking like to the side. He just starts, he's like, oh no, you can't. Nope. Like, just totally reprimanded her. And her face was just like, oh my God, kind of like the pregnant woman's. And just no bedside manner at all. And I was like, oh God. And so he like takes the photos, and then I kind of leaned over and I said, whenever he's done, we'll wait a minute and then you can get some pictures of everybody. And she was like, oh, okay. And so then Pat heard me. So then when he was done, everyone just paused for a second so she could take pictures. It's her family. So there's just, you need to have like a good way to kind of deliver that message other than like, oh no, you don't. So that was funny for me, not for her or him. The flowers, the bouquets were really pretty. I think the stems were too long. They kept floating up. Her bouquet kept floating up. And then just poor Brad kept messing with her boob tape. Like, so that stinks. I wasn't really noticing it, so I'm hoping it's not visible in all the pictures. During dinner service, I asked Pat first if I could do some macro shots of the rings, and he said yes. And then I asked the bride and groom if I could borrow their rings, and they were totally fine. Sometimes you can tell like they're a little bit nervous, so you just want to watch how you're doing that. So they were fine. So I took them outside, and Bree asked the assistant if she could come with me, and I said absolutely. I didn't want to use the fake wood table, so I was like walking around. I asked the coordinator if I could have a rose. So I got that. And it was just hard. I always want to, Susan Stripling always said, like, you just want to incorporate things from the day or from the wedding or just something that's relevant to the day. So Bree ended up finding like a cool piece of bark. And then I think we just used like one of the candles and then one of the roses. So we were messing around with the macros. And all of a sudden, one of the young boys comes up, and he's maybe like 10. And he just gets like right in our face at the table where we're working. And I'm like, hey. So he just gets kind of like right up in our face where we're working. And I was just like, hey, how you doing? Trying to make small talk. He's like, good. And then he like put his hand out and he was like touching what we were working with. And I was like, oh, can you just leave that alone? I'm trying to like focus on the prongs of the ring. And he goes, can I take a picture? Without even thinking, I was like, do you have a camera? And he was like, oh no. And I was like, oh. And I guess I have realized that he was talking about my camera, but like, I wouldn't hand my camera to an adult, much less some 10-year-old kid. I was like, do you have a phone? And he was like, no, I'm going to get one. So I tried to like have a conversation with him about that. But then like, he kept like grabbing stuff. And then at the end, I was getting the rings and he's like, I'll take them. And I was like, yeah, that's okay. And he's like, no, I can take them. And I was like, it's okay. And he said like, I'm a cousin or something. And I was like, I understand. I was like, I'm going to take them back. Even Bree was like, I can do it. And I was like, no, it's okay. And again, I think it was Susan Stripling that said years ago, like, if it's kind of like the chain of command, like if you take the rings, you hand them back, or you say to someone like, I'm handing these to the videographer, because if you just hand them to someone else to take a picture or do something with, and then they don't get back to the bride and groom, you are the ones who took them. And it's kind of like your word against somebody else's. So that's been ingrained in me, that like, especially with the chaos of the wedding reception. So Brie kept saying to me, and I was like, it's okay. And then the little cousin was like, I can do it. It's fine. And I was like, no, really, I need to take these. And I was like, no, really, I need to take them back. So we were walking, and I was telling Brie, I said, I really like to be the one that hands the rings back. And then she was like, I can at least take his ring back. He had like, that's just silicone band. It was like a silicone band he had. And then I could like see him. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. You can take his band back. But then I made sure to go over and hand the rings and actually put them right back on the bride's finger. So I just think that's like an important thing. But the little cousin was more than I had bargained for, just like not leaving our side and then touching things and trying to take. He was touching my camera then too. That was a lot. There were other things that I will think of. I think I got some really terrible party dancing pictures, but some good ones in there. And that's all I can remember for right now. That's all I got.
I took 2,103 images over the course of 8 hours, which gave me an average of 263 per hour, which is right in line with where I've been. My groom prep shots, there are quite a few in there that I like. The lighting wasn't the best, but the moments were good and natural, and they were just nice interactions that the guys were having. The whiskey that I couldn't think of the name of was Angel's Envy, and I'll probably forget that immediately. I have some decent shots of wedding party portraits, like a different angle from what Pat was shooting. I like my first look photos under the gazebo. I have some nice tight shots of them. The ceremony photos, we lucked out with being able to have it outside and not under that separate little tent. So Pat did shoot with flash. He just loves flash. Because we were outside, I opted to just go with natural light. And I moved around a lot. I used my 70 to 200 a fair amount. And I also went like kind of behind them just a little bit to try to get those other angles. I didn't stay back there for too long, because when I did go around there, I could see the bride like look at me, and I didn't know if she would think that that was distracting for like the guests. So I would just get a couple shots and then leave. But the lighting from that angle was really flattering for her. So I think she'll like them when she sees them. He was fine. He was a bit of a slow blinker, but she was very photogenic. Her makeup looked good, and she had a really nice smile. So that was easy to work with. Some challenges. The guy's pants were so tight. So like you could make out the seams of their boxer briefs, and anything they had in their pockets, you could see. I really thought somebody was going to split their pants. They may have after I left, because I left at 8. So who knows what else happened. But they were super tight. The bridesmaids' dresses, I don't support people spending more money than they need to, but I'm seeing a trend of bridesmaids' dresses that must be being purchased on Amazon, because they are clearly coming packaged, folded up, and people are just taking them out and wearing them. And it is crazy. It's like one of my biggest pet peeves, these madly wrinkled dresses that look like they didn't even get opened up until the day of the wedding. And no photographer is going to go through and Photoshop all that out. So that's tough to work with. And her boob tape situation, I didn't realize in the moment. I saw like the little bit of adhesive tape that you use to like hold your dress in place. But I think what the problem was, I saw in one of the photos, a long strip of tape. So Kim Kardashian started doing that. Well, she's probably not the first one. I feel like supermodels probably did it back in the day, but would take like big strips. So Kim Kardashian used to take like duct tape and just like tape the whole boob up and over her shoulder so that she could wear like a deep plunging neckline. So now there are companies that sell those. So I think our bride had those really long flesh colored strips of tape to support her boobs. And then I think she was using the other like double-sided tape to try to keep her dress in place. And I don't know if she was trying to stick it to that tape. And I just don't think it was working. So I think that's what part of the struggle was, because then she just kept messing with it. And as we all know, once you mess with tape, you can't keep messing with it. It's just not going to work. The flowers were beautiful, really beautiful flowers. I introduced myself to the florist only to find out that that was the wedding coordinator. So there were buckets and buckets and buckets of roses that were being set up loosely. They just did long garlands of eucalyptus down the tables, and then they had tons of roses everywhere. But the wedding coordinators were setting that up. I'm not sure what the price was that the florist quoted for them to do it, and they opted to have the wedding coordinator do it instead. I did see flower boxes at the bride and groom's house, so I don't know if they got them wholesale or were able to just order flowers directly from the florist. I know when I was a florist, I would never just sell cases of flowers. So that was taking a while to set up. And those were the wedding coordinators. As I mentioned earlier, the wedding coordinator made the call on her own to go with the outdoor ceremony. I was happy, and I was happy that it worked out, but it was definitely a bold move. And the other thing, there were an estimate of 120 guests. The chairs filled up right away. And then we noticed standing guests. And the parents were lined up to walk out for the processional. And the mom realized she was upset that there weren't enough chairs. And she told the wedding coordinator, and she was like, we don't have any more. They're just going to have to stand. So it was a little bit of a literal standoff. But then, I mean, there was nothing else the mom could do. Like, they needed to start the wedding. So I counted, there were probably about 80 chairs, which that's not enough. You can't have chairs for 2/3 of your guests. So that was a little bit of a logistical snag. And then we had portraits. The one thing that got a little bit weird was, and I've seen other brides do this, where she had like 80% of an idea. So she would say like, oh, I want to do a picture of us looking out this way. And Pat would try to say, okay, what do you want? And then she would be like, well, I don't know. I just tell me what to do. So it was like she had an idea or a vision in mind, but then didn't really have the vision and didn't know how to express what she wanted. So I tried to kind of come in and offer some suggestions, but it was a little challenging because, you know, it's not your idea. So you don't know exactly what she's going for. And we've got some good options. And I tried to get some pictures of them looking at each other, not just camera aware. And then she did want some walking photos. So I gave them the instructions to like, look at each other, look at us, look at each other, and like kind of go back and forth. So some of those came out really nicely with a really nice backdrop there. Introductions are rough. Right before introductions, I have some nice candid shots of them doing shots of moonshine. A concern was that right after they did it, the bride said to me, I don't drink, so this is going to get really messy fast. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was a concern. I was also told that one of the bridesmaids drinks too much. Two of them, I couldn't tell which one. It may have been a competition. So we had one pregnant bridesmaid, and then two that were, every time I turned around, they were doing shots of moonshine. So I didn't hear how the night ended, but they were excited to party. The tent, I don't love shooting inside of tents because it's just the interior. You just get the interior of the tent. Apparently I have a problem with creases and wrinkles and folds because that's one of the things I hate in the tents. But the dance floor was set up and there was a tent pole in the center. And so the dance floor was between that tent pole and the other side, the one side of the tent. So when you were shooting, there was a tent pole right at the edge in the center. So that definitely cast some shadows. I had 3 lights going. I didn't love the placement of the one, but it was kind of tight. So I have some images that are lit really, really well, but there are a few that I just don't love. But they're good. And logistically, the biggest issue I feel like with the chair situation, and then we lucked out with the rain. I already talked about how you need more than 2 bottle openers. I ended up talking to the 2 wedding coordinators after the most stressful parts were over. They were really, really nice. So they probably had just a lot on their plate with a day, and also knowing how stressed people were about the rain. So it ended up, the bride seemed very happy. I know she was a nervous wreck in the morning. The groom, as is often the case, was, I think, happy that she was happy. Everyone seemed to have a good time. Like I said, when I left at 8, everyone was still in good spirits. I'm happy with a lot of my images. There are a few that I feel like the focus is still a little soft on some of them. So maybe I just had the aperture too wide open. I like some of the speech pictures. There is a good balance of ambient light, of the light outside of the tent coming through the windows, and then the lights that are strung up in the tent, and then the flash that I had on the bridegroom and the speaker. So they were actually, for once, in a position where you could get all 3 faces and reactions in the same frame. And that was for both speeches, the best man's and the family friend. I took some photos of the food, and they're just awful. Like, I can't photograph food on the fly like that unless it's in natural light. So I kind of snapped just one thing of each dish that was on the buffet line before people went through. So it's, I don't know, it's in the folder, in the file. I don't know who would ever put it in the gallery. And then there are some decent macro shots. The one thing I have to remember is the lens is too powerful for the ring. I get some good shots, and then you can see, even though I thought we had wiped it off, like a fingerprint ridges on the stone, on the diamond. So those are just going to be too close to use, because then you have the smudges. The other thing you have to watch out for is if it's too clear, too good, you can see any flaws in the diamond. I had that before with like a family stone. I think it was a family stone, but there was like a huge flaw in it. And I was like, you can't put that in the album. So it was almost like I went too far, went all the way around the bend. But some of them I like. There were like some that were on the bark, so it's dark, and it's just like the diamond that's kind of lit, so it pops off the background. And that's it. Other takeaways, I think in general, it took me, I don't know, maybe it was like in my 20s, but like learning to be really careful with sarcasm. So my advice to a lot of people would be, on a wedding day, when you're dealing with a lot of people that some you may not know very well or haven't met before, you've got a lot of people having conversations and saying things, you've got a lot of different emotions. My advice would be, watch any sarcasm and try not to be like too witty or too funny, because the things can come out really wrong. And you just like, it turns people off, and then that is, an issue. So, especially with weddings, I've always gone into them just smiling, pleasant, and just really trying to say nothing that would be confrontational or misconstrued at all. So it's just something to keep in mind, because there's a lot of people and a lot of emotions and stuff going on, and it can be easy to kind of say the wrong thing and put your foot in your mouth. And also, you just don't know, like with groups of people, who's going to be offended or upset by something. if you're still listening, it means you made it through the whole episode. Thank you. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening. And if you would give us an honest rating and review, I would love that as well. Thank you so much.
Let's pack a bag and follow the sun. Kick off your shoes and have some fun.
Thanks for listening to A Second Helping. Please like and subscribe.
Won't let this moment pass us